Before we get into the full thing, I just want to go over some stuff with cameras because we'll obviously be spending some time dealing with cameras. Now that we have the basic understanding of tracking with just an individual point, planar tracking, and then we also have corner pin tracking, we're going to start to get into camera tracking. In order to do that, we have to understand a little bit about the camera. Our next assignment will not be a tracking assignment. It'll be a different assignment, but the camera will still come into play. So this is a Nikon D7000 camera. This is a application you can get. I forget the name of it because I downloaded several of them. Digicam Control. There we go. You can donate if you want. So we have to understand just some basics of it. You may have had a photo this semester or 10 semesters ago. Just a refresher, if anything. So some of the important things that we obviously need to know when we're shooting our footage is how do we get the best footage for our stuff. All of these things, if we were to do a 3D track, come into play because of how we do all of that stuff. Starting from the top here, it's set to manual mode. Typically, if you're going to be using a camera, you typically want manual mode so you can control the stuff individually. We have the ISO, which, who knows what ISO means? Oh, you want to see it? Okay. There we go. All right. Noah, you had your hand up for the question and answer?
Yeah, yes. International, standardized.
What does it mean, though?
It's essentially the amount of light that's created from the camera. So the higher the ISO, the more light it creates. However, it creates graininess.
It takes the more, like the higher up the ISO, the more light, the faster it is.
Right. The more sensitive it is, right? So at 100 ISO, you're typically looking at a very clean image, but it's not very sensitive to the lighting in the room. Usually very dark, right? So typically if you're going to shoot at 100 ISO, you're going to be outside or in a very bright room, right? So if I were to crank this one up to 6400 and snap a picture, this was 200 was the original one. I have other settings on that we'll eventually get to. It's thinking, and there we go. This is 6400 ISO, right? So you can see just changing the ISO definitely changes the amount of light that comes into our screen, right? The sensitivity to that.
You definitely need the white balance.
I do need a white balance, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, I thought this was like a picture video from
Nope. This is like live picture taking. All right, next in line, shutter speed. Okay, so what's shutter speed? Right. This is Digicam Control. You're not going to use the program. This is just so I can show you the stuff. So yes, how long the shutter is open. So the way that the camera works is that the shutter opens, light goes in, and then the shutter closes. If I shoot this at 1/6400, or sorry, let's go to the other side. No, that was it. Shouldn't go far enough. Yeah. If I shoot this at 1/6400, is that going to let in a lot of light or a little bit of light? Very little light, right? Because if we open 1/6400th of a second, we can click the button and just verify that's what the picture looks like, and there's nothing there. It's just complete darkness, okay? Was that? Right. Now, it's hard to see on the projector, but there is a lot of grain that's inside this image. Because I have my ISO turned up to 6400, it's letting in a lot of grain because of that. So I'm going to crank this down to 100, snap the same picture, and I'll probably get a little bit cleaner image. It's harder to see, but it's completely black, okay? So just again, so you can see the before and after. It's harder to see on the projector, but it's definitely there. Come on. Yep, it's there. All right. Just trust me. When you watch the video, you'll see it, maybe. All right. So that's 1/6400th. How long can I keep a shutter open?
Set the bulb and be however long you want it.
Right. So you can set the bulb and be however long you want it. If I set this to 30 seconds, what's that mean for how much light gets in? A lot gets in. 30 seconds worth of light gets in there. Okay. Typically, that's way too much, right? Typically, when you're shooting with a flash, you're going to be at like 1/60th of a second. There's no flash. Let's just hit the button and see what we get. Still not very much with this 100 ISO. Yeah, but I want a clean image. So there's 1 second. There we go. We're starting to get something. There we go. Pretty good. And then we can go up from there, let's say to 6 seconds, and then hit the button again. This is what's nice about having a photo app on your computer, is that you can look at these kinds of things. If any of you are photographers, I definitely recommend, if you do shoot stuff in a studio, definitely get some kind of setup like that. Right, so there we go. So that's pretty clean. Now, I could have taken my ISO up and then gotten the same image, but I would get a lot of grain in there too, okay? Sometimes you can't avoid it, sometimes you can. All right, next one on the list is aperture. What is that?
How big the lens is to take in light.
Right, how big the iris is, right? So the lens is going to open up and then close. If we shoot at 2.8, is that a big opening or a small opening?
Big opening.
Big opening, right? This lens, that's as high as it goes, is 2.8. So again, we'll hit the go button. This is 6 seconds. Probably crazy bright. There we go, crazy bright. All right, let's see, that's it. Let me change my, focus on that, there we go. I'm just gonna use my chair as a prop real quick. There we go. That's good enough. All right. Yeah, I think this one is just a anything program. Like it'll find it, whatever you're using. All right, so I'm gonna take my shutter speed down. Let's take it to 1/10. Hit that. There we go. All right, so that's pretty even lighting, okay? Now, what are we seeing with this picture? It's out of focus, right? But it's actually one part is in focus. As we bring the shutter to a lower number, meaning that the iris is opening further, what happens is the edges of it become a lot softer. You get a bigger depth of field on this, so it's very good for these like cinematic shots where you have nice depth of field. The problem comes in, let's say I'm tracking a piece of footage here and I have it like this, it may not track that footage good in the background because it's all fuzzy. Also, if I'm tracking a piece of footage, let's say I'm tracking that poster on the wall, when I'm this far back, I need to adjust my track to replace whatever that poster is so that it is fuzzy and blurry, and then as we get closer to it, it's in focus. Okay, so that's stuff that we have to be aware of. Now we did mention the white balance, so I'm going to go here and actually have like a mixture of light in this room. There we go, there's our fluorescent light balance. Yeah, that one's better. It's like in between, right? Yeah, whatever. Typically when you take photos, you have a RAW that you would shoot, and then after you're done with the photo, you're able to go into Photoshop and actually just pick which white balance you want and adjust all of that on the fly. These other settings up here, the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture, you cannot do. All right, so what does exposure compensation do? Yep. So that's +3 right there, and then there's this one. So not a huge difference in these two, but it's apparently there. Now, anytime we shoot a picture or shoot a video with this, we want to, again, get the cleanest image or the most appropriate image, I guess you could say, for what we're doing. If we're shooting something that is going to be used in a movie, a documentary, or whatever, typically you want to have a good depth of field. Typically you want to have a soft background to it, and you typically want to have a nice smooth motion with your camera. It's very rare that you would actually take the camera and just kind of jostle it around while you're videotaping something. Some movies, yes, but they still have it under control. They still use some sort of gimbal to hold it in place so it doesn't go too crazy. If you're referring to DC movies, I'll agree with you there.
Action movies in general.
Yeah, some of them. So typically we want the cleanest image regardless. So anytime I shoot, I typically want these to be at a like 200 ISO. If I'm outside, 100 if I can do it. My shutter speed, I try to get this as fast as I can, right? The faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur on all of my items. If I shoot something at a 1/6400th of a second, I can pretty much like lock stuff in air, okay? Now that's motion blur, so that as something's moving, it goes really, it like stops it. Think of like you're shooting a tennis match and you need to replace the tennis ball in the match, or if you've seen Forrest Gump, they replace the ping pong ball in that match. You have to make sure that your stuff is crystal clear when you shoot it so that you can do all that stuff. So being able to record at a higher shutter speed for that is ideal. You'll never be able to shoot a video with a camera like this at 1/6400th of a second. It just can't even process that kind of data. Even the video that's there is 30 frames a second, so it's not like anything amazing. I'm shooting with RAW. Here's my image size. Here's compression. Anytime you see compression, you want no compression. Any compression you do, you want to do in the computer. So anytime you have any setting on your camera that says that kind of stuff, you want that to be like no compression. Single shot is fine, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the gist of the basics of the camera. Now, the assignment that we're going to be doing is going to be an HDRI 360. So we're going to be cleaning one of those up. So typically those things are in the industry. 360 HDRI. This is what they look like. Okay. Now this shot is basically a picture this way, a picture this way, a picture that way, a picture this way, and a picture above and below. Okay. And then they take it and they stitch it all together, so you get this 360 panoramic. So that wherever my camera is sitting, I could basically put an object there, and all the lighting and reflections would be put into that object. All right. That's something that you would do for 3D, and it's something you could do even inside of After Effects with some plugins to make your stuff look more realistic. Okay. Now, it's not just a single picture this way and that way and so on. It's actually several pictures this way, several pictures that way, several pictures this way, in order to capture different light settings. So let me jump into Nuke real quick just so you can see what this is going to look like when we're working on it. Sure. Oh, that was just that. I don't need that. 2560. HDR Cleanup. Images. Actually, let me grab an actual HDR that's done here. Oops. Come on. There we go. All right, so this is an HDR. So this is one that's been processed, it's been set up. If you look at where the sun is, this is a typical thing you would see in a photo. As you're taking a picture with your camera or a video with your camera, you're trying to capture the scene. You're trying to capture everything that's there. But the camera can only do so much. If it's a super bright day and your area is really dark, you can capture one or the other. You're not going to be able to capture both at the same time, okay? That's where an HDR comes in. Because with this, you can actually go through and capture the dark areas, capture the middle areas, and capture the light areas, and smash all these things together, okay? So we can't see the sun. I'm going to go over here to this menu and start pulling this, not that one, pulling this one down. And now you can see the sun, okay? So this was a picture that that person took of that scene. Now you'll see the sun looks good, but the rest of the area, if I can zoom out, is very dark. If I go the other way, let me put it back to where it was, over here. Let's see, maybe we'll get something here. These windows are very dark. We can't see anything in those. I'm going to pull it the other way. And you still can't see much, but there's still a little bit of something there. Okay? Now this is, again, something else that they captured. Whenever you do photography for this kind of thing, you want to capture your photos, your angles at different light settings to bring that in there. Now let's jump back to this and talk about what settings we want to adjust. So one of the things that we don't want to have is soft fuzzy edges. So what am I going to change on my stuff here to not get soft fuzzy edges? Wrong. Aperture. Right. So my aperture, I want this to be as big as possible. It's stupid, as big as possible to make the smallest hole. It always throws me and I have to make sure I check it. Okay? So the biggest number I have here will create a small opening. So what does that mean for all my other numbers? Right. I need to make my shutter speed happen a lot slower so that it lets in more light into that opening. Okay. And for this, I'll leave it at 200. Anytime you do an HDR, anytime you do anything like this, you have a controlled environment. It's a very valuable thing to take the time to make sure you do it right. So if you can do this at a lower shutter or lower ISO, like 100, then definitely do it. In here, we're not going to be able to do it because it's kind of dim. And because people are in the room too, it's not really going to work, but we'll see. All right, so there's that. Is it processing? Yes, it is. Way too dark. All right, so I got to take that shutter speed like crazy far, like maybe 6 seconds. This is a lot longer, 6 seconds than I expected. Boom, that's how you do it. Right, so that's kind of like my middle ground right there. I don't see anything where it's crazy out of focus. I'd probably adjust this so that I'm more on that side anyway. But it is a pretty clear image as far as what we're seeing. I'll probably take this up to maybe 10 seconds. Let me hit the button again and see. And again, this is a good idea to see this on a computer screen if you have the ability, because that way you can actually see this is a big version versus this tiny one that you would see on the back of the camera. The process for doing this takes some time. There you go, that's better. You see we even got like a little bit of a shift there when I did that. Cool, so that's better than it was a second ago. Cool. All right, so our ISO is 100, our shutter speed is 10 seconds, our aperture is 22. Now, in order to capture an HDR 360 image, I need to basically capture every single bit of data all the way around here, and I need to capture every single bit of data up here, and I need to capture every single bit of data below me, okay? I'm not doing one up here. I'm just going to show you how it would work so that you know that if you ever get a job doing this kind of thing. This is a job at companies. This camera is very limited. You'll see I basically have from that file folder there to about here on the screen. So that gives me, what, like 22 degrees or 40 degrees or something like that? I'd have to rotate it 20 degrees, capture it again, go rotate 20 degrees, capture again, rotate 20 degrees, and keep doing that in order to get enough pictures on this one that it wouldn't get distorted. Even though this camera isn't a GoPro, there still is little bits of distortion happening around these edges. Oops. Why don't you do that? Just fit there. All right, it's freaking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to put this back on. There we go. I'm going to take this lens off. Now, my other lens is this one. I very quickly cover that up so we don't have any dirt getting in there. Here's my dot. All right. Then we'll plug this back in. And turn that back on. This is on manual. Yes, okay. All right, we'll take a picture. still going for 10 seconds. And now this is overblown because we changed lenses, but now look at how much data I'm getting, right? So this is a fisheye lens. The fisheye lens captures, I think it's 135 degrees is what it's capturing here, okay? So now I can take that shutter speed down some because the fisheye doesn't have as small of an aperture. So 10 seconds, we'll go 4 seconds. Still too much, look at that. Let's go 1 second. And we'll fix this. We'll go back to fluorescent. Cool. So that's a pretty good representation of this area right now, right? So you can see now I'm getting basically like to the middle of those pictures there to nearly the side of this screen right here. That's a huge area of capturing with this. Even below this, I'm getting this chair that's right there, and I'm getting the ceiling tiles pretty much right above it. Now what I want to do with this is I would need to rotate this evenly around so that I get nice even increments of pictures. You can definitely do that with a tripod. I can figure out which one it is to rotate. It's this one. There we go. And I could rotate it, you know, like this, and then like that, and like this, and move those things around. But they make tools for that. So I'm going to turn this off again, unplug this again. So this is called a Nodal Ninja, and its purpose is to do exactly that. We mount this. Side. We mount the camera to this piece, and then this on the bottom will increment as far as these little notches are set up. So I think I have it set up now to 45. So every time I would rotate this, it'll click 45 degrees, and then I can take a picture. It'll click 45 degrees, I'll take a picture. Click 45 degrees, take a picture. Okay? There we go. I'm not actually going to do that now because it'll take another 15 minutes to set that up. But that allows me to get an exact 45 every time I take a picture. Now, when I'm doing my pictures, it's not just about getting that one picture. I want to take it at different light values, okay? So, I don't know if this one has it specifically. I have to plug it back in to see. And turn it on. Camera, Explorer tools. All right, I don't see that specific option inside here. Exposure compensation. Oh, bracketing, there we go. All right. So in this software, I'm able to set the low bracket to, let's say, -5, and the high brackets to, let's say, +5. And the number of shots, let's say, just for ease, we'll say 5. Okay? So what this is going to do is, just like we talked about before, it's going to take a really, really bright image all the way to a really dark image and give us different exposures along the way. So I'll hit start, and we'll see what we get. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's working at all, though. It looks exactly the same. All right. So there's something with this software specifically that is just not letting it actually work. Yep. I'm not going to be using that. Now, just like everything, they have toys and gadgets and tools for all occasions. You can't bring your laptop into the middle of traffic if you're shooting a scene there. So they have this, which is a promote control, which is basically something that allows you to set up all your bracketing on here and then you hit go, and it takes 4 or 5 pictures, whatever you set it up to. Turn it 45 degrees, hit the button again. Turn it 45 degrees, hit the button again. And you do that all the way around into a circle. Then you tilt the camera down 45 degrees. Take more pictures all the way around. Tilt it up 45 degrees. Take more pictures all the way around. Okay? So by the time you're done, you end up with a pretty decent collection of images, okay, of all these different resolutions. Let me just close these, close this. Turn this off, turn that off. I'll just move this off to the side so we don't break it. There we go. Okay. Then what I would do is I would go into a 360 stitcher, and I have it on my laptop, but it takes literally an hour to do a whole set of images. What it does is you take every one. So let's say you took 10 pictures facing this way of different light exposures, and 10 this way, and 10 that way. You basically will have 10 series of panoramics that you need to stitch together. So you drop each set into this program, panoramic stitcher. And what it does is it finds where the edges are, where the like items are, and then it puts them together. And what you'll end up with is you'll end up with this type of thing here. There's one panoramic, and you'll have a light one, a medium one, and a dark one, okay? So it's a pretty huge process to do these kinds of things, but this is a job. These are people who actually make money doing these things. If I wanted to take a 3D item and make it look like it's in the middle of the desert, I have to get the lighting that looks like it's in the desert. I have to get the reflections that look like it's in the desert, okay? Now, where our assignment picks up is that we're going to be cleaning up one of these after they've gone through that process. After they've taken the photos, they've brought it into that Stitcher program and created the different panoramics. Now we need to actually bring all those together into an HDR and then clean it up. Now I'm cheating with this one because I want you to see how horrible the quality is for these types of things. When you take something like this and you spend an hour or so going through and setting it up, taking the pictures, getting all the data that you need, and it doesn't take an hour, but once you have it set up once you set up the first time it does, you get really high quality stuff, thousands of pixels. This is a 360 camera. So this will take photos in 360 and automatically stitch them all together. You can also do video. I can set up the exposures on here. The only issue is that the resolution sucks for stuff, okay? So that's the one we're going to be working on. Usually we go outside and we shoot out there, but Mother Nature has not been nice to us, so we will not be going out there. So I'll have another nicer one if you wanted to stitch a better one later, but for now we're just going to use the one that I have here. So on our folder, where am I at here? Not there. Here, 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 and here. All right, so you will get these images right there. Now put them into our Dropbox folder so that we have them inside of our 2560. I closed it, nice, I did. Okay, so this is what the mid-range looks like. All right, so this was done in the S lobby right on top of the counter there. And you can see this is a 360 of that room. And then this is a brighter version of that. This is a darker version of that. And then these are all different ranges of that same thing. Now, one of the things we get with this gyroptic 360 camera is you get this. At the very bottom of every image, it can't capture the very bottom of it. Even when I shoot this on a tripod, typically we'll end up still with that tripod in the camera we have to remove that so it doesn't show up in reflections and stuff in 3D. So we have to clean this out. That's one of our goals, is to clean that up. There's a good way to do it, which I'm going to show, and there's a bad way to do it, which you might try, and then you'll end up doing it my way anyway. Cool, so I'm going to close that. So I'm going to start off in Photoshop, and what I need to do first is combine all these images into one, okay? So the Stitcher program has already gone through and grabbed each one of the series and stitched each one of the series together. Now I'm going to take all those series and stitch those into one. So under Photoshop, and this is just defaulted in there, I'm going to say merge to HDR Pro under Automate. I go and find my files. Here they is. It says attempt to automatically align. Yes, please do that, and then hit OK. Now we sit back and grab a beer, and we wait. So what Photoshop is doing is it's taking all the images, trying to find out their brightness values, trying to find out the like items in each one, and trying to make sure they're all lined up in the exact spot they need to. Once it has that, then it just literally smushes them into one image. There's the image. Now I'm going to go over here to this mode. Default, it comes in at 16-bit. You want this to be a 32-bit. There's lots of information inside here. We want to make sure we have all of that information, okay? You'll see the windows are kind of blown out. If I drag this back, or up, there we go, we can actually see the trees way out there. And if I drag this up, then you can see even some of the shadowy areas that are right here. Here's all the different exposure values for my camera. Some of these are the same, like this is +4, +4. All right, cool. So I don't need to actually do anything with this. I just like to make sure I have the values there. You don't want to check this. You just need to make sure it's 32, and then you hit OK. Bless you. All right, so here is our HD 360 image. If you go down here to this arrow and you say 32-bit exposure, you'll get basically the same slider that we had a second ago. Okay, this is just for preview. We're not doing anything with it, just in case you wanted to look at it. I'm going to save this as from Photoshop HDR. I'm going to save this as an HDR image. So it saves as a radiance. Because this is a 32-bit image, we only get a certain amount of options. This is one of them, Radiance HDR. Okay, close that. Now, if you do it the wrong way, you probably started clone stamping inside Photoshop, trying to remove that bottom piece. It takes forever. Don't do it. So I'm in Nuke. I'm going to read in that image. Go to my folder, go to this folder, 2560, HDR Cleanup, images. From Photoshop, there it is, and view it. Okay, so you'll see the size of this image is 4018 by 2018. The typical resolution you would get off of a camera one is over 11,000. Okay, so think of all the resolution that you would be able to capture and put inside here. In this one, if I zoom in, you can see that these are not nice and clear. They're actually like really soft and fuzzy. Even outside, you can see there's a lot of like grain and a lot of noise that's inside there. That's just inherent of portable technology versus, something that is built for this kind of thing. Cool. So you can see down here at the bottom, we have this big white box. We need to get rid of that big white box. We eventually want to end up with this image without that big white box at the bottom. That's the goal of this. We can't just crop it because then that removes part of the image. We actually have to go through and clone stamp to get rid of the white box, okay? But we're going to do it a certain way. So this image here is basically, like I said before, imagine I took a picture this way and that way and this way and that way and then above and below. That's all those images put together, okay? So I'm going to tell Nuke that I want to unwrap this. I'm going to convert that back to what it would look like if I just had photos, okay? So I'm going to go to this, I'm going to hit the tab key, and I'm going to say spherical transform. Okay? The settings for this, let me get rid of this so it just has one here so I don't get confused. The settings for this are what are you inputting, what are you outputting, and then what changes do you want to do to this. My input type is a lat-long map. Latitude, longitude. Think of the Earth, it's a latitude, longitude map. That's what we get. And that says, what output do you want? I want to change this to a cube. Okay? So what it's doing now is it's basically just taking that 360 image and then giving us just a portion of that image, not the whole thing, just a portion of it. And if I use this up here and I rotate, you can see how I can actually like rotate around this image. It's pretty fancy, right? It's not a cube yet though. So I'm going to look at my resolution. Up here at the top, this says 2048 by 1556. My resolution should be square so that if I have 4 of these things, they all line up perfectly. So I'm going to go to my output, I'm going to go to new, and I'm going to give this a square resolution. Oops, I need to figure out what this was again. 2018 is the biggest number. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to go to new, I'm going to say square 2018, and make that 2018 by 2018. Okay? Now this gives me one side of the square, or one side of the cube. I need to have how many sides for a whole cube? What'd you say, Kaisha? 6? Closet. There we go. All right, so 6 sides, right? 4 around and then the top and the bottom. So we need 6. So this is 1, so I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. And then go here and view it, double click, and then I'm going to change the rotate Y to 90. All right, so that gives me a 90-degree rotation so that this is one side, this is the next side, and then I just keep going around. I'm going to grab this one, view it, make sure I've double clicked, go to 180, copy it, paste it, connect it, make sure this is 270. Every time you should make sure you get the right one. Seems like every time I do this specific thing, I get the same setup where I keep clicking this, changing the old ones, I want to change the new ones. All right, so I have my 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. This gives me a look all the way around. Now I'm going to take those and put those back into a 360, okay, back into that lat long map. So this takes this image, splits it up into a cube. Now I want to put it all back together and see what it looks like. So I'm going to add a spherical transform again. And this time I'm going to go from a cube to a lat long map. Okay, now it seems silly, but you'll see why when we get to that step. When I change this to cube, I got this: positive x, positive z, negative z. If we look at what the 3D world looks like, this right here, this white line going this way, that's positive x. This white line is positive z. This one is negative x, this one is negative z. We just have to know that it goes xz, xz, and then the positives and negatives are typically next to each other. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab this one and go to this. This is negative x. I'm not going to go there because the 2 x's will not be next to each other. They'll be opposite. Okay, positive z, negative z. Then I'm going to view this. And then this is what I currently get. Okay, so what this has done is it's taken those 4 pieces and put them together, but now they're not in the right order. Okay, so I just need to go back and just kind of shuffle some stuff around. So if I go back to this one here, and then I go back to this one, oops, not that one, this one, and I look at what these look like before and after, I can kind of see that they're all off. Okay, it's like this is where the table is, or the counter. And then my new one, the counter is in the other one. So I'm just going to shift all of these 1 over. So this will go here. This will go here. This will go here. Okay, so now the counter is in the right spot. I just need to swap maybe the other one. So I'm just going to disable, no, not that, that one. Okay, so let's just swap this one and that one here, this one there. Okay, so it might take you a minute to just kind of play around with them to get them lined up right. But whatever we have here, we should also have down there. Now you'll see my window's also in an off spot, so let's go back and fix that too. So the window should be on the outside, so now that I have these in the right order at least, I'm just going to still go through and just shift them over another one. So this one will go here, this one will go here, this one will go there, and this one will go here. All right, one more, and that should be good. Now, there's another way to do this, but for now, you can just do it this way. There we go. So now if I look at what this image looks like, and I look at what that image looks like, they're pretty close. Okay, they are off a little bit. This spherical transform is not the right resolution. This needs to be the same resolution as we came in with 4018 by 2018. There we go. There we go. So now you can see they're in the exact same spot. Okay, so I still need the top and the bottom. You can see the top and the bottom are missing from this one. So I'm going to just copy this transform, paste it. And then on here, you have to pull it out from the side. That's where the Y is. So I drag that in, and you can see it put the bottom of this down there. So I'm going to go and rotate this in the, let's say, X direction, 90 degrees. Nope, that's the ceiling. I'll rotate it -90. There it is. And then I just change this number until it lines up. So let's say 90. I don't know why I thought 90 would work. It's going to be 0 or 180. That looks like that's good. Okay, it's a little bit off there, but that's fine. That's just how it took the photo. I can double check by going to 180 and see it's really off. So yes, it was definitely 0. Okay. And that's going to make the next one easier because if I copy and paste this, and then I drag this one out. Oops, wrong one. That means that this one that's on top is just going to be 90 here. And there's the top of it. Cool. So all we've done in these two steps, broken it apart into squares, into these pieces, which are just pieces of those cubes, and then put it all back together. That's all we've done in those steps. Okay. And you can again verify that they look the same. Here's the start, here's the end. I'm going between the two, and you can see there is a small difference. This number is changing slightly, but it's not anything to be concerned about. So this is why we did it. Remember where my translate Y is the one that's pointing down, that's all the white stuff. If I just go and view that piece, look how nice and neat that square is. That's the bottom. That whole piece that was stretched out, that's it right there. So if I'm trying to clone stamp, this is a lot easier to clone stamp than that big mess that was along the bottom, okay? So I'm just going to go and write this out. Drag that there. Click my folder. HDR Cleanup, images, yes. Need to clean. And then this will be an HDR, so need to clean.hdr. Render this out, just this current frame. And then I'm just going to go into Photoshop, open that one, need to clean. And then just using clone stampers, whatever it is, clean it up. You can just get rid of the paper too, you don't need the paper there. Now because this is an HDR, it's not only clone stamping the one, it's clone stamping all of the different levels. So as we move this, it's adjusting all of those things. And this is why we do it at this point, because then we don't have to do it to each one individually, it's just this one. All right, you get the idea, I'm not going to do the whole thing. All right, so I'd save this, jump back here, and then I just need to replace this square with my new one. That's all I got to do there. So I'm going to read I will find my need to clean, and I just change this one to that one. And so now if I look at the end, you'll see this one is nice and clean, and the other one is where I didn't touch up, and that needs to be adjusted. Okay, so that's what this whole setup is going to look like when you're finally done. I'll make this nice and neat so it's in here. I'll hold control, drag this, and so on. Actually, I'm going to add a dot node here. Pull that up. Dot node. That didn't help. There we go. And now we do the same thing on that bottom one with the dot node, nice and clean. Okay, so same stuff you would do. Take a screenshot of your node graph. Save this image. The image is the only thing you're turning in, that cleaned up HDR. You're just writing this out as just an HDR. We brought in an HDR, we cleaned it, now we're sending it back out. Sarcona done HDR.HDR. Render, image, there it goes. Okay, there's no sheet for this one because it's so simple. It literally is something you would be able to start in one day and finish in one day. Okay, the most confusing thing people get stuck on is just what numbers am I punching in here. It's just a matter of rotating it 90 degrees and then checking it and making sure that it lines up. Okay, this is basically what it would look like here. That's not it at all. What happened to my planar tracking, or my 360? I had this all set, and then it just disappeared. Oh, I know why. Maybe it crashed? Probably crashed. 3.4 at 130, that's it there. Cleanup. And what's neat too is once you, like, let's say this is something you're going to do for a job, whatever. Once the setup is there, it's simply a matter of changing that top HDR with your new one. All the other stuff is still set up. You just clean up the bottom and then send it out again. Clean up that one, send it out again. Oops. Come on. So this is just showing in this instance where each one of these pieces are. So here's negative X, here's negative Z, positive X, positive Z, positive Y, negative Y. And these are just colored checkerboards lined up so you can kind of see the representation of what it's doing. It's actually like wrapping each one of these around in order for that to make it look like a 360. Okay, but if I had another HDR, all I do is go here, delete that one, bring in my new HDR. All my stuff is connected. I go and find that translate Y that's in the bottom, write it out, fix it up, bring it back in, render it out. Okay, you can create a whole pipeline of stuff just by doing that kind of thing. And that's that assignment. It's pretty straightforward, just a matter of getting the stuff in the right spots. Cool? Questions? No?